The rain came down in sheets that night, the kind that turned concrete to black glass and had footprints in shallow puddles. At exactly 2:27 a.m., the alarm on Detective Laura Beck's phone jolted her awake, a 911 call from the industrial district of Brooklyn, New York. Somewhere between the warehouses and shuttered loading bays, something bad was happening. She slipped into her jacket, grabbed her badge, and raced through the quiet streets toward the old maple-lined corridor of the 81st Precinct. She didn't yet know that this call would lead her into a maze of corruption, fear, and silence. When she arrived, yellow police tape flapped in the wind around a bleak warehouse building. A security guard lay in the shadows outside, handcuffed, trembling, his eyes darting to every dark corner. Inside, the room was bathed in the cold glow of fluorescent lights. A single table stood in the center, covered in files and a laptop whose screen still flickered. On the wall behind the table was scrawled in black marker, "Tell the truth or shut up." The guard, whose name was Marcus Rivera, was shaking so badly his words came out in fragments. "I heard them. I recorded everything." His voice cracked. The meetings, the quotas, the orders. Beck froze. She realized this wasn't simple burglary or assault. It was something bigger, something nobody wanted uncovered. Rivera was a janitor for the precinct, but he had stumbled into something much darker. He had secretly recorded conversations between officers and supervisors, hours of tape showing orders to arrest, to count arrests like trophies, to bend the numbers and ignore victims. Much like the case of former Officer Adrian Schoolcraft, who secretly recorded conversations at the NYPD's 81st Precinct and alleged corruption and manipulation of crime statistics. Wikipedia here, Rivera said, the pattern was even more sinister. An entire underworld of falsified crime reports, hidden settlements, victims ignored so the precinct could hit targets. Detective Beck flicked through the recordings on Rivera's laptop. The voices were quiet, the words coded, but the implications were clear. Quota talk, arrests for the sake of numbers, victims forgotten. But when Beck tried to bring the recordings up the chain, she was met with silence. "We'll review this," her lieutenant said the next morning. But nothing changed. The precinct locked down uptake of the tapes, classified them as internal issue, and the guard was reassigned. On the outside, the public saw a normal facade. Cops patrolling, arrests being made, headlines of crime dropping. On the inside, another reality hummed. Rivera's recordings revealed a clandestine culture. Officers instructed to prioritize high-arrest easy cases, complained of real crimes buried, victims discouraged from filing, supervisors bragging about cleaning up the stats before city officials visited. Beck swallowed hard. If this got out, the repercussions would be seismic. Meanwhile, Rivera's life began to unravel. His landlord served him eviction notices. A truck left tires spinning outside his building late at night. "They know," he told Beck one evening, voice barely more than a whisper. "They've started watching me." She tried to offer protection, but her superiors insisted there was no case. Without official permission, the recordings couldn't be used. Without a formal complaint, nothing moved. All the evidence, right in her hands, sat gathering dust. And yet the clock was ticking. As weeks turned into months, Beck and Rivera dug deeper. They traced the commands to arrest statistics not just in Brooklyn, but across the precincts of the city's department. They discovered memos marked for executive eyes only, instructing precinct commanders to improve arrest numbers by any means necessary. They uncovered settlements paid to victims who were never told why they were being paid, that those quiet payments masked underreported crimes and shielded the department from scrutiny. The tapes, the memos, the afraid guard, they all painted one disturbing picture, a force more concerned with optics than justice. Late one night, Beck followed a lead to a dirt alley behind an abandoned warehouse in Brooklyn. Her flashlight bathed trash bins and broken glass while the wind carried the distant hum of traffic. In the shadows, she found a thick plastic bag, tied at the top, tucked behind a metal dumpster. Inside, a stack of unfiled arrest reports with names scratched out, charges downgraded, victims' details removed. Her heart pounded. Every piece of evidence she and Rivera had found was at risk, exposed, and then destroyed. She realized they were in the crosshairs now, not just a department indifference, but active obstruction. Rivera's voice trembled when she called him later. "I don't think I can stay here. They're going to make an example of me." Beck looked at her badge, at the city skyline glowing in the distance, and felt the weight of what she was about to do. If the recordings leaked, if the corruption became public, the fallout would shake the department, the city, maybe even national reform. And yet, nobody believed them. The official line still held. No credible evidence, just a disgruntled employee. The night swallowed their doubts. Then, one tape conversation changed everything. It was late June after hours. On the tape, a precinct supervisor's voice came loud and clear. "Bring them in, even if the case is weak. Lodge them. We need numbers by end of month. We're under target. Make something stick." Beck rewound a recording, typed the time and date. She pressed play again. "Don't worry about real charge. Just charge when we can close fast." The hairs on her arms lifted. She looked at Rivera. He held his breath. The system was telling officers, win by any means. Justice itself was optional. Detective Beck filed her own internal memo that night. Forwarding the tape, she watched the email send. Then she received a text. "Urgent. Find the basement archive files. They're gone." Her phone froze. Her breath shortened. In the precinct basement, files that corroborated the recordings, victim statements, discarded reports were missing. She raced down the corridor, unlocked the door, pushed it open. The shelves were empty, the cabinet drawers wide open. On the floor, one folder, blank, stamped confidential. Beck's eyes widened. Whoever wanted to silence Rivera and her was already 2 steps ahead. As she stood in the cold basement, rain still tapping the windows above, Beck realized they were not only uncovering corruption, they were chasing a ghost network made to be invisible. And then she received the phone call she'd been dreading. Marcus Rivera was missing. His apartment was abandoned. His car gone. The building manager found no note, no message. Just a light on his phone blinking, unanswered. The guard who recorded everything vanished. And in that moment, the precinct's door slammed shut behind her. The storm outside felt like it had followed her inside. She whispered. This just became a race for survival. The evidence they had, the tapes, the files, the missing guard, were about to explode the system. And yet, nobody outside believed them. What happened next would change everything. Detective Laura Beck sat in her car on a dark Brooklyn street, rain blurring the windshield into streaks of neon. The empty passenger seat still smelled faintly of the burnt coffee Marcus Rivera used to bring during their late-night meetings. His disappearance wasn't random. It was calculated. She'd seen it before, the subtle purge of inconvenient witnesses, but never from inside her own department. She pulled up the last text Marcus had sent before vanishing. "They're deleting everything. I have backups. One at the docks." That was 3 nights ago. Since then, his phone had gone dark, his bank account untouched, his car found abandoned under the BQE. The NYPD had opened a missing person case, but no detective wanted it. Every time Beck asked for updates, she was met with deflection. "We're looking into it." Maybe he ran. She'd seen this dance before, how the system buried its own when someone poked too close to the core. So she went rogue. The next morning, before dawn, she drove to the Red Hook docks, where Rivera claimed to have hidden the backups. The smell of salt and diesel mixed with the low growl of tugboats in the fog. Her flashlight cut through the mist as she walked between rusting shipping containers. She half expected to find a rat or a drunk sleeping off the night. Instead, she found a small padlocked metal case, bolted to the inside of a container wall. The initials Amar were scratched into steel. Her hands trembled as she forced it open. Inside were 2 USB drives wrapped in plastic and a folded piece of paper. The note was written in shaky handwriting. "If you're reading this, they know. Back up the files. Trust no one." Beck took the drives home, loaded them onto an offline laptop, and pressed play. Rivera's voice crackled through, tired, paranoid, determined. He kept a full video diary of the last 6 months. Recordings of meetings, phone calls, even secret footage of officers in plain clothes exchanging envelopes in parking lots. Each clip added another nail to the coffin of official credibility. Beck's stomach turned when she recognized one face. Captain Dawson, her commanding officer. He'd been the one warning her to let the tapes die. Now, here he was in full frame, passing an envelope across a diner booth. The deeper she went, the worse it became. Rivera had stumbled onto a pay-for-protection ring. Small-time drug dealers paying officers to ignore certain shipments, while precinct data showed record-low narcotics activity. The numbers looked clean. The streets didn't. And it wasn't just one precinct. Rivera's recordings hinted at a chain, precinct captains, city officials, and political aides working together to paint a fake portrait of declining crime. Beck realized they weren't just cooking statistics. They were manufacturing a lie for the city. By noon, she decided to go to internal affairs, off the record. But as she pulled into the IA parking lot, a black SUV followed her. It parked 2 spaces back, engine still running. She went inside anyway. An officer at the front desk looked up with a flat expression. "Detective Beck, you've been expected." Expected? Her pulse spiked. In a sterile conference room upstairs, 2 men in suits were waiting. One introduced himself as Assistant Chief Reynolds. The other didn't give a name. "We've reviewed your submissions," Reynolds said smoothly. "We appreciate your dedication. But these tapes are inadmissible. Chain of custody's broken. Mr. Rivera's gone. There's no case here." Beck leaned forward. "You're telling me a missing whistleblower and direct evidence of bribery means nothing?" Reynolds smiled faintly. "I'm telling you that you should stop digging before you bury yourself." It wasn't a threat. It was a sentence. That night, Beck returned home to find her apartment door ajar. Her stomach turned to ice. The lights were off, but she could hear the faint hum of her refrigerator. Everything else was silent. She stepped inside slowly, gun drawn. Her desk drawers had been emptied, her laptop gone. The only thing left on the kitchen counter was a Polaroid photo. Marcus Rivera, sitting in a dimly lit room, head turned away, time stamped yesterday. Her hands shook. Someone wanted her to know he was alive, and that they controlled whether he stayed that way. She drove aimlessly for hours, ending up at a diner off the interstate. Every headlight behind her felt like a tail. She ordered coffee, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She thought about Rivera, about how nobody believed him, how everyone dismissed him as paranoid, until she saw what he'd been fighting to expose. Maybe that was the point. To make the truth look insane until it's too late to prove it. She decided to leak the story. Not to internal affairs, not to the department, but to the press. She contacted a freelance journalist she trusted, a woman named Naomi Keller from the Ledger, who had covered police corruption before. They agreed to meet the next night at a motel outside the city. Beck never sent files through email. She'd bring the drives in person. But that night, the story took another turn. As Beck reviewed the remaining video files, one folder caught her eye, time-stamped just 2 hours before Rivera vanished. She opened it. The footage showed Rivera in his car, dashboard camera running, speaking to someone outside the passenger window. The camera caught only a silhouette, broad shoulders, a peaked cap, the faint glint of a badge. Rivera's voice was calm but shaking. "You can't cover this up forever." The figure leaned in. "You don't understand, Marcus. This goes all the way up." Then, a flash of light. The recording cut to static. Beck froze. She replayed the last frame, zoomed in frame by frame, until she caught a reflection in the car's mirror. A face. It was Chief Reynolds. Her breath caught in her throat. The same man who told her to stop digging was the one standing at Rivera's car the night he disappeared. The missing guard hadn't just been silenced. He'd been erased by the very people who swore to protect justice. Beck backed up the footage to an encrypted drive and slipped it into her jacket. She knew she had until morning before they realized she'd seen it. She had one shot to get to Naomi and hand over the files before the department buried them for good. As she stepped outside, the city's sodium light stretched across wet asphalt. Her reflection looked foreign, tired, hunted, defiant. Somewhere out there, Rivera's truth was still alive on those recordings. But as she reached her car, her phone buzzed with a new message. No number, just one line. "You have until sunrise to give it back." The phone slipped from her hand. The rain began to fall again, soft and steady. The storm was far from over. And when the first gunshot shattered the quiet night, Detective Beck realized the hunt had just begun. The first gunshot tore through the silence like glass splitting. Detective Laura Beck dropped behind her car, breath ragged, rain splattering her face. The bullet had cracked her rear window. Someone wasn't warning her anymore. They were hunting her. She looked around. The parking lot was empty, only the hum of flickering streetlight above and the steam rising from wet asphalt. Whoever pulled the trigger knew exactly where she'd be. She crouched low, heart hammering, and made her move. Sliding across the ground, she crawled behind a dumpster and scanned for movement. A figure darted near the edge of the lot. Black coat, broad shoulders, same build as a man she'd seen in Rivera's final recording. Chief Reynolds. Her pulse spiked. She aimed her weapon, but he vanished behind a delivery truck. When she reached the spot, he was gone. Only a set of fresh footprints in a puddle remained. Beck jumped into her car and sped toward the city outskirts. She didn't go home. She knew her apartment was already compromised. Her goal was clear: get the evidence to Naomi Keller, the journalist, before the department buried everything or her. The rain blurred the highway lights into ghostly streaks as she drove. She could almost hear Rivera's voice in her head, the recordings looping like ghosts that refuse arrest. If you're hearing this, they know. At 3:14 a.m., she pulled into a motel parking lot where Naomi waited, a rundown place off the service road, neon sign half dead. Naomi sat in her car, face lit by her phone. Beck ran toward her, clutching the envelope with the encrypted drive. The two women locked eyes through the rain. For the first time in days, Beck felt hope. "You're going to need to publish everything," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. "Every file, every clip, every name. No edits." Naomi nodded, voice steady but eyes wide. "You're shaking." "They tried to kill me," Beck whispered. "Reynolds is part of it. He." The headlights of a black SUV flooded the parking lot, blinding them. Beck's stomach twisted. "Drive," she hissed. Naomi hit the gas as tires screeched across wet pavement. The SUV followed, closing fast. They tore down the road, weaving between industrial trucks and empty lots. The SUV rammed their rear bumper once, twice, trying to spin them out. Beck rolled down the window and fired 2 shots at the front tires. Sparks flew, glass shattered, but the SUV kept coming. Naomi swerved off an exit, heart pounding, knuckles white on the wheel. They crashed through a chain-link fence and into an abandoned train yard. The SUV stopped at the gate, engine rumbling. 2 silhouettes stepped out, flashlights slicing through the fog. Beck and Naomi ducked behind a row of derailed boxcars, breaths shallow, adrenaline screaming. "They'll search every car," Naomi whispered. Beck clutched the envelope to her chest. "Then we move before they find us." They sprinted across the tracks, slipping on gravel. Beck spotted a maintenance shed up ahead and pushed inside, bolting the door. The rain hammered the roof like gunfire. Naomi's phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number. "We told you to stop digging." Beck took out the drive and plugged it into Naomi's laptop. "Upload it. Use your emergency channel." Naomi hesitated. "They'll trace the IP." "Do it." Within seconds, Rivera's files began transferring to a cloud mirror Naomi had set up for whistleblowers, an encrypted server that posted directly to Ledger's internal newsroom feed. Percent bar, 32%, then 57%, then 88%. Beck could hear the crunch of boots outside the shed. She held her gun steady as the lock began to rattle. Naomi whispered, "It's at 99. The door burst open. 2 men stormed in, tactical gear, no badges. Beck fired once, grazing one shoulder. Naomi grabbed the laptop and ducked. Another bullet ricocheted off the metal wall. Beck lunged forward, slamming one man against the doorframe. A flashbang dropped to the floor, white light filling the shed. When Beck's vision cleared, the men were gone, and so was Naomi's laptop. Beck staggered outside into the rain, coughing. The SUV's taillights disappeared into the distance. For a long moment, she stood in the storm, soaked and trembling. Everything felt lost. Then her phone buzzed. It was Naomi. A voice message. Laura. They took the laptop, but the upload finished before they pulled the plug. It's live. The ledger has everything. Beck exhaled, half relief, half disbelief. Rivera's truth, the corruption, the orders, the evidence, was finally in the open. The whistleblower they called paranoid had just brought down one of the most powerful men in the department. Within hours, the files went viral. News anchors repeated the same phrase. Evidence of systemic manipulation within multiple precincts, the footage of Captain Dawson exchanging cash ran on every network. Chief Reynolds was suspended pending investigation. Rivera's recordings were authenticated by the FBI. The story consumed the city and the country. But there was one thing missing. Rivera himself. A week later, Beck received a plain envelope in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a USB drive and a single photograph. The photo showed a dimly lit room, a metal chair, a window covered in grime, and a handcuffed wrist resting on the table. The timestamp was 3 days after the night Rivera vanished. On the drive was one final video file, just a few seconds long. Rivera's voice, weak but calm. If you're watching this, they think they buried me. Don't stop. Tell them everything. Beck's throat tightened. She looked out at the city skyline. Sirens echoing in the distance. Helicopters cutting across the clouds. The truth was out, but the cost had been unbearable. Months later, investigations led to multiple arrests. Politicians distanced themselves. The NYPD released a statement calling Rivera a concerned citizen whose courage will never be forgotten. They still hadn't found his body. Detective Beck resigned quietly, leaving behind her badge and service weapon. Some nights she swore she could hear the faint echo of Rivera's voice through her car radio, distorted, fading, but unmistakably real. And then, one autumn evening, a news alert flashed across her phone. New corruption probe launched in Chicago precinct. Whistleblower claims to have recorded everything. Beck stared at the headline for a long moment. The cycle had begun again. She whispered to the empty room. He recorded everything, and they still didn't believe him. If this story shook you, imagine how many stories never make it out. Subscribe, because next time, the truth might come from someone you know.